Welcome back to KBC News Check. Many thanks indeed for joining us. As I had alluded to earlier, is that on this second hour, we are looking at regional peace. And to be more specific, we are looking at the peace efforts in South Sudan. It has been called the youngest nation in the world. I don't know whether since South Sudan actually gained independence from the mainland Sudan, whether we've had a new country, but it's a country that we are very passionate about. Even if you look at the Kenyan flag and the South Sudan flag, you will tell a lot of similarities. And as I say, if your neighbor is in trouble, you really need to help him or her put out the fire, if it's a case of fire. And Kenya has been on the forefront to ensure that South Sudan is peaceful. And that is why on the wise council of President William Ruto, the Tumaini initiative was launched together with his counterpart in South Sudan, Salva Kiir. Well, it was going on and on and on, but unfortunately to some point it was halted. We'll be knowing why it was halted. And how do we have hope and peace? Tumaini means hope in Swahili. And indeed, they really need this hope. And joining me on set now is Dak Booth, who is a political analyst, a political activist, and also a lawyer from South Sudan. And if you remember, last year in January, we had talked about the Tumaini initiative right here on Channel 1. And now we want to know exactly where we are. The peace efforts, and actually they resumed on Monday. Is it on Monday? Yes, on Monday. Yes. So where are we in terms of peace efforts? Welcome to the program, Dak.
Thank you, brother.
It's been a while.
It's been a while.
Yes.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
You look smart and younger. What's the secret?
I will tell you. Some good water and some veggies.
That's beautiful.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be back at the KBC and to talk basically on the matters peace, reconciliations in South Sudan. And as you are aware, as you have said, the country is still young, the youngest nations in Africa. And we're in the process of building the nation. So some of these stories should not make people tired when we're talking about peace, reconciliation and so on and so forth. That is just by the way. First and foremost, my name is Dak Booth. I am a lawyer and a criminologist and a certified professional mediator. I am currently working with and for the SSPM, the South Sudan People's Movement, as their chairperson for legal and constitutional affairs. I am involved in what is going on. Even before I joined the process, I have been working as a civil society leader, organizing the youth to make sure that the basic freedom are respected. I am here at my own capacity, and I'm grateful to be here once again. Thank you.
Welcome. First things first, are we on the roadmap to peace in terms of Tumaini initiative? Yes. Maybe we can have, we can recap.
Yes.
We can recap how we started this peace process.
Yes.
And how Kenya is also being factored.
Yes. As you're aware, the Tumaini Peace Initiative, which is now the common name, it's actually called the High Level Mediation for South Sudan, but it has been shortened as Tumaini Initiative. As you're aware, Tumaini Initiative started last year. The conversations, the idea came about in December between the conversations that President Dr. William Ruto and His Excellency Salva Kiir had. It's actually a continuation of, the Rome Peace Talk, as you're aware, and that Rome Peace Talks, commenced in 2019 between the government of South Sudan and all-out group. All-out groups are oppositions that did not, that have stemmed from the 2018 peace agreement, and the president saw it fit that those who abstained from signing the revitalized agreement on the resolution of the conflict in South Sudan were to be brought in to bring in their, their views in taking the country forward. Basically, that was the start. So last year, around December, the president formally requests His Excellency that he should take over from the Rome Peace Talk. Now it has taken 1 year. It was launched in May, and it has been going all along. There has been some challenges here and there, but there's still hope because now the talks has resumed. And we hope this is, according to the stakeholders, they are calling this stage as a concluding or final stage. So we hope by the end of next month or so, we're going to conclude. And that will be the hope of the region, because this year we have got two important resolutions. That is that if the Tumaini, the successful conclusion of Tumaini initiative, and probably the winning of Raila Odinga as, you know, the chairperson, the AU chairperson. Those are our two resolutions as a region. If those one comes successful, I think we'll be good to go. Yes.
All right. What has been the bone of contention? Because even before the Rome effort and even before Tumaini initiative,
yes,
there was no lasting peace. What has been the bone of contention, and especially when it comes to these talks?
Yes, the bone of contentions are majorly one or two. You remember the talks began smoothly in May. It began first, almost with the four thematic areas. That is discussions on justice, economic, and you know, and so on and so forth. So there, those were the bases on which the discussions commences. Now, when it was launched, it was followed by a signing of Declaration of Principles in June 2024, and also followed by the initialing of the 9 protocols. And there was a times when you know, the government again made a point that the Tumaini initiative was to be attached to the existing peace, which is the revitalized agreement on the solution in South Sudan, which is currently being implemented in South Sudan, which formed the basis of the current government in South. So they wanted the Tumaini not to be a separate or a standalone agreement. They wanted it to be attached. That is where we departed. That's where the opposition to the government, you know, parted ways, and that led to the government withdrawing in around August. And in December, President William Ruto made a breakthrough by first going to Juba, met with the stakeholders there, met with President Salva Kiir and the first Vice President Dr. Riek Machar, and you know, convinced them to come back to the negotiations, and now they are back. When the talks resumed in December 4th, they still reached a deadlock because the government actually withdrew its first delegations. And when the new delegations came, they came with a proposal that there should be, you know, renegotiations, which the oppositions refused. So they wanted the agreed protocol to be renegotiated, and that caused a deadlock. But now, with the new, you know, resumptions, there has been some windows, you know, through which the members are going through.
And notice some of the specific programs or activities are being undertaken by the Tumaini initiative, because I'm 100% sure you're not just getting into a hall and discussing peace. There are some peace initiative already that are emanated from the Tumaini initiative.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you know, the 2018 peace agreement had some areas that are not being implemented. And the opposition is saying that what we need to do now is not to renegotiate, because when parties come together, you know, the government delegations comprise of different parties that signed the previous agreement. You know, the agreement that they signed, you know, had some provision which had not been implemented. In fact, it's only almost 2% of that had been implemented. So they are saying, let us not talk about, you know, things that have been captured in the previous agreement. But the opposition are saying, no, let's start anew first. If there's anything, there's a provision that have not been implemented there, let's incorporate it here. So this is the departure. You know, the government the government relations are acknowledging the fact that the previous agreement had not been implemented. That is their stand. They said, let's not touch that. Let us touch on areas that had not been touched by, you know, the previous agreement. So that's where the contention is. But what people agreed and has been captured in the Declaration of Principle is that, you know, the conflict is there. you know, there's need for reconciliations, there's need for constitutional making and so on. So those, they agreed there. And those ones are also captured in the previous. So the opposition has said, let us actually chart a new path. But the government is saying, no, let us continue with the conversation. That's where the problem is. Yes.
And I'm quite sure that my initiative addresses concerns on the root cause of all this, because we started out quite, it's taken a lot of years.
Absolutely.
A lot of blood.
Yes.
And a lot of weapons as well.
Yes.
What are some of the key things that the Tumaini initiative is keen to look at? Because at the end of the day, we also have to have a point of disarmament.
Absolutely. The key cause of the conflicts, Ben, are obvious. We need to have a democratic state. We need to have a society that is open, that is, you know, allow its citizens to, you know, to be able to speak up, and those were the aspirations and the ideals of independence. So how do you do that? You do that by first having a constitution. You know, because this crisis actually, if you remember, it started as, you know, as a conflict within the ruling party over elections, you know, and, you know, there were no, you know, platforms, because the constitution that we had was brought in as implementations of what we call in law that constitution is antecedent to the state. You know, that constitution is you know, is bigger, you know, or it's first, you know, before the state. When the state is granted its statehood, first and foremost, it has to have a constitution. This was just merely implementation of that constitutional principle. It's now we wanted to have a constitution, but those who are in the system are, you know, saying maybe they are comfortable with what is happening with the system. So the rest are saying no, let's have that. So even to have an elections was not going to be possible unless if we use our traditional laws, like, you know, the customs, but those, you know, those cannot be used to have free and fair elections. We have to have a positive law and constitutions. So those are the areas that brought the conflict. We need to have a state that is accountable. We need to have a state that is bound or governed by the rule of law. And when those things were not there, then we actually clash. And this is where we have this problem today, because even in the previous agreements, people say let's have a constitution, but now those things have not happened, because the previous agreement has got three main challenges that made it not to be implemented. First and foremost, there's lack of political will, you know, among the parties, and that's the lack of political will come about because you know, people are fought, and, you know, they realize that if we allow this agreement to be implemented, there will be accountability at the end of the day. You know, people have not agreed, really. And then the second challenge is there's lack of funding, because you remember when some parties full out, even the international community also full out, they didn't actually implement this. And there was also lack of accountability. You know, the resources that were put forth to implement the entire agreement had not been utilized. So those were the challenges that made this agreement made the previous agreement not to be implemented. You know, but there has been a lot of improvement, because you remember, if you may allow me to finish this thought, is that the first agreement was made in 2018. Now, it created two centers of power. That is that it gave Machar and Salva Kiir almost equal power, because there were two command-in-chief.
Yes.
Yeah. Machar was a commander-in-chief, and Salva Kiir was also a commander-in-chief. So that brought the clash on July 8th, on 8th July 2016, because they could not, you know, operate in one city. And that idea of creating two centers of power was borrowed from 2005, comprehensive peace agreement, you know, between John Garang and Omar al-Bashir. You know, they created almost three centers of power. The John Garang had, you know, his own army, was a commander-in-chief in the SPLA, and, you know, the Sudan army forces. And also the joint security unit. So it was borrowed from there. But in South Sudan, I think it did not work. You know, the conflict broke out in 2016. Machar, you know, walked out of Juba, was chased out of Juba. But now I think it was corrected in 2018. That one was corrected. the agreement made Salva Kiir as the only single chief of staff. I think that has subsided. Although it has its own challenges, because Machar is not able to move, he's not able to do politics. That has been a challenge, but it is better than the previous years. Yes, so those are the challenges that prevented the peace, the current peace agreement to prevail.
I'm looking at Kenya. Indeed, Kenya is the one spearheading this event, and I'm quite sure you are privileged to have a head of state, that is Dr. William Ruto, spearheading these efforts. What is the role of the international community? And I want you to look at them both objectively, because let's be very honest, South Sudan doesn't produce arms. The arms and the weapons that we have seen, they must be brought in from one point or another.
Exactly.
And also the role of the international community in ensuring that there is lasting peace.
Yeah, the role of the international community is imminent, and it is very important if you look at it from the onset. International community is a key player. They join hand with East African community, join hand with IGAD in ensuring that all the peace efforts are done speedily. The international community currently, if you look at the Tumaini initiative, in fact, the Tumaini initiative is mediated by 3 bodies. That is IGAD, the Sandigidio, which was mediating the Rome peace talk, and the Kenya government. Of course, Kenya government is now taking the lead, and that comes because it was the request by the government of South Sudan, to Kenya that you mediate this, and President Ruto find it in his wisdom to take it as was requested. Now he invited the community of Sandigidio, which is under the leadership of Pope Francis, and IGAD, because IGAD was also the lead mediator in the 2018 agreement. So they have been brought together to make sure that this thing is done speedily, is done not as something that is done by Kenya, but also by the region. Because at the end of the day, we are all frontline states. If you look at Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia. So all these are brought in through IGAD, right? And IGAD has been there from independence, from the times of the CPA that brought our country's independence to fruition. So these are parties that cannot be, forgotten. So Kenya has brought them together to make sure that, they contribute in resources, they contribute in ideas, in many ways, in convincing. Because the reason why Kenya is very important in this is because it has been the player from the onset. You look at the positions of somebody like General Sumbeyo, is somebody that commands a lot of respect in the country. Even if there's anybody who could maybe be annoyed for one reason or another, but the status of Sumbeyo make him to hold his horses. Reason being that this is somebody that we have known over the years as somebody who has done a lot for South Sudan, has no interest other than seeing the country grow, because this is his objective at the moment. I think this is what he feels he should do. You need to usher this completely into a statehood. Yes. And
for our viewers who are watching, when we talk about Sumbeyo, is the former chief of general staff, that is General Lazarus Sumbeyo, who has been a peace mediator for years, even during his time at the Kenya Defense Forces. Let's talk about another matter that has been in many conflicts, the issue of a constitution. I believe the clamor for multipartyism in the country, in Kenya now, started very well early, but since 1992 is when the spotlight really shone, and we started the clamor for multipartyism, for a constitution. But 18 years later is when we had the new constitution, that is the 2010 constitution. And I wouldn't want a new country like South Sudan, our brothers, to take that long. A lot has changed. We need to wipe out this conflict that we have and install a new constitution, because a lot has changed over the years. How do we do that?
Well,
where are we?
Yes, the constitution is something that is the interest of everyone, that South Sudan should have a constitution. Like I told you, what we have is called an interim, constitution that was made in fulfillment of what we call in constitutional law and principles in international law that say constitution is antecedent to the states. So it was done in a boardroom. Now, and like, you know, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah says, seek ye first the political freedom and others will be added onto you. So we were in hurry, wanted to have a state. And thereafter, the moment we attain our political independence, we can now go for the rest. And the first things to achieve our aspirations, to make the South Sudanese people realize their full potential, is to have a democratic constitution, a constitution that respects basic freedom, allows citizens to express themselves. Because, as you are aware, we have been dominated for a number of years. We have lived under several powerful forces in the world. So it is when we had these constitutions that we can be able to say now we have really we have attained our full right as a free people and members of the international community. So all these efforts are geared toward ensuring that we have a permanent constitution, a constitution that you know, is people-centered, a constitution that varies from all our people, especially the Kenyans have just a neighbor here as a constitution that is described as progressive constitution in the world. Why? Because of the many basic freedom that are incorporated there. So all this idea, if you look at it, if we summarize it, what is the end goal? The end goal is to have a permanent constitution that will allow people, guarantee political pluralism, guarantee equality, or, you know, of all genders, guarantees, you know, people to have freedom to do what they like. And that is what we want. People can invest, people can have a good education, could have accountability. How do you do that? You do that by making sure that we have a law that guides us. So all this will end with the constitution. Once we have that, then we now can have our constitution. We can have our elections and choose the leader we want. There's no any other way than doing that. Yes, and there's no any other shortcut. There's no other alternative. So I am aware, being a profession that I've studied in this country, I am quite sure of the historical struggle that Kenya had. It took life, it took the blood and sweat of several Kenyans to have this constitution that we are all proud of today, even those of us who live here. I can mention a few, but that's not the moment. So what happens is that from the start of the Lancaster House, 1963, people went there and made proposals. There were people who even want to not to be part of Kenya. There were people who wanted, even some sections of this country even wanted to have the independent whole so that they can catch up with other Kenyans, because they believe if independence was too soon. So they wanted the independence to be delayed by the British so that they can catch up, you know, and be like other Kenyans. So they were afraid that if independence was coming in 1963, they were going to be dominated by others. That was the fear. Others also wanted to succeed, wanted to join other groups and so on. So those were the discussions, and they were very emotive. But ultimately, the independence was the call, not just of the African in Kenya, but also around the globe. You have people like Jomo Kenyatta, Jaramogi Odinga, Shenga Neko, who could not wait for independence to delay. Right? They wanted independence too soon, and that was they were having that idea of uniting united Kenya that was going to be governed by the rule of law. Now, that's when independence was granted. It took a number of years again. You know, Kenya at one stage went to a single-party state. That also took many years. So it is good actually for us that we were inspired by those struggles, because you remember when we were under the previous Sudan, the places for hiding, you know, when we came to refugee camps, we find the refugee camp as a blessing in disguise, because we were able to go to school, we were able to learn from the things that were happening around here. So this struggle is also inspired by what's happening in various African countries, and Kenya is no exception. So it's better we have started this early, right? The only difference here is that in as much as South Sudan do not have the space for people to talk, the illiterate is there. But we're also learning, you know, there's now free social media. Those days Kenyans were finding it difficult because you could find there's only one radio, there's only one voice of Kenya. But right now, everybody has a television, has a means of talking, with his phone. So the freedom is becoming too fast. Yeah, we can't wait. We cannot go for 40 years, for 30 years, the Kenyan are gone. No, we are saying, no, let's start it now. Yes, and as you are aware, the constitution cannot come in a cold blood. It requires the struggle. And those are things, the route we are taking are routes that have been, traversed by others. And that's why, when I said earlier, we are in the process of really making South Sudan a nation. Yes.
And I really admire your mastery of Kenyan history and
Yes.
also our politics as well. I'm looking at Sudan itself as a country. You
Yes.
broke away from Sudan to
Yes.
be an independent nation, South
Yes.
Sudan.
Yes.
Sudan is in turmoil. Looking at the Horn of Africa, Somalia is also in turmoil as well.
Yes.
How does this affect the peace efforts to ensure that South Sudan is not only peaceful but
Yes.
thrives as
Yes.
well?
As African, you will remember that when your neighbor is bleeding,
Yes.
when your neighbor's house is burning, you'll be affected in one way or another. Even the cry of the children, when members of that house are fighting, you'll be affected in whatever ways. Sudan has been in conflict for a very long time. It has gone through a lot of bloodshed. You've heard of the Darfur genocide. You have heard that in Sudan, southern Sudan, we have had 2 million people died in the struggle for independence. Even after we split it, there were several movements who are struggling for different visions. Others, like for example, the CPA had got 3 main provisions. One, it allows the people of Southern Sudan to go for referendum if they wanted to succeed, which we did, of course, in 2011. There was provisions that allow the people of ABA to actually vote after us to choose whether they want to be part of Sudan or they wanted to be part of Southern Sudan, of course Sudan now, South Sudan now. They did their referendum, solely, and they voted 100% almost to be part of South Sudan. But the international community had stand aloof. They did not recognize the results. It is South Sudan that recently I saw them meeting the first vice president of Riek Machar. And South Sudan is a process of adopting the referendum to make them part of South Sudan. Now, there was also provisions that requires what we call the popular consultation for the people of Blue Nile to be consulted on their future, political future. So when we left, the issues that made us to succeed have not changed. They're still there, right? Because you remember the vision of the SPLA under Dr. John Garang was hard to have a united and secular and democratic Sudan. The idea of secession came as afterthought. It was just a last, when there were no, options. So we were voting on whether we wanted to be alone or wanted to be part of. So and for 6 years, the President Bashir has to make the unity attractive within 6 years. When he failed to do that, we succeed at the end of the day. Now, the point I'm heading to is that Sudan have had those problems, and they are still there. The problem of having a theocratic leadership, leadership, that does not separate religion from the state. A system that that's not democratic, that wanted all people to be identified by one single identity. They wanted everybody in Sudan to be identified as an Arab. If you have names like Ben, like Gabriel, like my name Dak, you are in trouble because you are considered a rebel. So, and our appeal that time was, let us have a state that has separate, that separates state and religion. Let us have a state that identifies, that recognizes all its cultures. You cannot be victimized for speaking in Shuluk, in Luo, in Nuer, in Paris, and so on and so forth. So those problems had not changed. And as a criminologically, because I'm also you'll find violent is explained from the point of cultural conditioning. So if violence has been passed from one generation to another, and if that system has not changed, violence can just erupt anytime, So that is where we have had a culture of violence in the Sudan, and that has not changed. People have not moved from a democratic state. They are not learning from the neighboring states. They are stuck there in that violence. So that is why even after President Bashir was removed, people thought, President Bashir was a problem. But when he was removed, what happened?
The country degenerated
to war. Why? Because there are no avenues. The group that came in, General Buhan, who's now the current leader of the Sudan, did not do what was required of him, you know. And now that's why even integration of the army was not possible, because the group that is led by General Emeti, you know, was a group that was made like a militia, sort of. Now, when they form a government, you know, the heads of the country did not even made it possible to have the army integrated, leave alone transitioning the country into a democratic state. So this is where the problem is. We've had this culture of violence, and people are not willing to live, you know, in reality, by making sure that let us have a country that separates all this. Yeah.
In as much as we are looking at the challenges that are facing peace in Sudan, South Sudan, and regional integration, I think it's also prudent to look at some of the successes, especially of the Tumaini initiative so far.
Yes. Yeah, we have had a lot of successes. The fact that the talk is continuing is one of the success. The continuations of the negotiations is a success, because now there's a light that these things will end up, you know, successful at the end of the day. One success of it is that we have initial almost 9 protocols. In fact, this agreement was supposed to be signed in November 20th. Chief Mediator General Sombe actually announced it, that the negotiation was going to end, and with the signing of peace agreement on 20th November. Unfortunately, the previous government delegation was changed, a new delegation has been brought in, but all is not lost, because now the negotiations are going on. The other success that I can also mention is the fact that South Sudanese are also now supporting the process. They are supporting the initiative, almost, you know, everyone in the country, and they are supporting it because they realize that now with the end of RRCs, you know, the revitalized agreement process in South Sudan, with the end of it, now Tumaini is the only options. There's no any other option, because with Tumaini, it can revive the dream, the ideal, the objective of that previous agreement, which, you know, talk about permanent constitution making, you know, reconciliation, justice, and so on and so forth. Now, the South Sudanese are fully behind Tumaini initiative as the only way, you know, to rescue us, to revive the hope that was lost as a result of the failure of the Tumaini initiative. The other success of it, of course, is the talks is inclusive. It has brought not just opposition parties that were part of the Rome peace talks. They've also brought in other parties like the South Sudan People's Movement, the National Salvation Front, Revolutionary Command Council. It has also brought in several stakeholders, you know, members from the academia, members from the society, and that is a success, because at the end of the day, with the combination of all this mind, we are likely to have an agreement that have almost everything on board. And with that involvement and inclusivity, I personally believe that even those who are not part of it, you know, will feel, okay, fine, if you have talked about this, that was what I wanted, now I can be part of it. Because remember, there were parties who refrained from the 2018 agreement. But when they realized that some parts were being implemented, they joined the government. So we believe when Tumaini is signed, with all its ingredients, you know, the aspiration of the people of South Sudan, once they are captured in Tumaini, even those that are not part of it now will also join at the end of the day, you know. And that, of course, will be made possible by the commitment of the parties, you know. Because signing is one thing and implementation of the agreement is another. So the inclusivity of that has been made possible in this process is one success of it. And we cannot also underestimate the support of the international community. IGAD has been so consistent, assisting, working with Kenya, shoulder by shoulder, with Rome, you know, San Egidio, under the leadership of Pope Francis is also part of it. So those are success, you know. Once, if all these people are involved, there's nothing that can prevent us from, thinking that this agreement is going to be successful at the end of the day. So those are success of the Tumaini that I can talk about now. Yes.
I'm also looking at the Horn of Africa.
Yes.
The proliferation on matters arms and heavy weapons.
Yes.
In the Horn of Africa,
yes,
is something that needs to be addressed.
Absolutely.
Because look at Sudan.
Yes.
They're in war. Yes. We have Somalia, yes, which has been, well, for years now. Yes. Yes. How are these impacting or affecting the Tumaini initiative that we are, as a country, spearheading?
I think that's a very good question, because it reminds me of one success of Tumaini that I had not mentioned earlier. From the beginning of this Tumaini Peace Initiative, the parties, the party led by General Stephen Boy, led by General Mari Lakou, General Paul Malong, General Pagana Mum, and the government are committed to the principle that they signed. So they have not, from the beginning, there has never been a report of fighting anywhere in South Sudan. So they are committed to really, that's a great thing, because sometimes you find, as the talk continues, you find fighting, occurring here and there. And that can also make the talks to break down completely. But that has not happened. It's a great success of it. Now, coming to the proliferations of weapons, yes, we are in a country where it is, you can only say Kenya and others that are living in a sea of peace. We are neighboring Sudan that for years has invested in weapons. You have had oils whose proceeds are only used in buying weapons and so on. So now that they have been disintegrated with different militias, different factions fighting each other, anybody who wanted to fight can borrow from them, And we have, as you know, I've seen you handling sometimes programs to do with military. We have a different entities around the world that want to make sure that Africa continue fighting by selling arms. South Sudan has gone through arm embargo, and up to now it has been sanctions, and that sanction has not been lifted. So yes, as a state, they may think that they can borrow through others. So and with also states, there are some rock states that can allow, these rock members to buy weapon or to allow the weapon pass through the territories. So harm are still in the hand of people, even within the Republic of South Sudan. One of the impediments to the implementation of the peace agreement is that there are arms in the hands of all the civilians in South Sudan, right? Because when the war occurred in 2013, civilians were allowed to come and join the fight in various groups, and when the conflict subsided, they did not give back the arms. So they are still having weapons in their own in the hands in the various communities. Now the government is also finding it difficult, because government and the army is a small sizable group, it's just a small group, Now if the civilians have weapons in their hand, even the army become irrelevant, become ineffective to say the least. Now, weapon, even as much as arm embargo has been imposed in South Sudan, the arms that are in the hand of civilians are too much. Recently, I think 2 days ago, President Salva Kiir has appointed several officers. I've read that I've launched initiative to have the weapon mobilized and taken from the hand of civilians. But that is going to take time, right? And especially it will be successful if these peace initiatives are concluded successfully, But when we continue with this culture of not implementing peace, then nobody will be willing now even to hand over the weapon. Because first and foremost, there are sections where when the government has no access. You have to convince those groups, convince them with factual programs that they know will guarantee peace for all people. Yeah. So in a nutshell, I would say that countries are fighting. Sudan is a big country that have invested for years in weapons, in arms. It used even to donate, people, officers, even in the Middle East, right? So Sudan has even been providing. Now that it is in problem, it is really a challenge. Yes.
And as we come to the tail end of this program, how do we ensure that the Tumaini initiative, there is lasting peace? You know, it's not just we have sat on the table and we have agreed that this is how we are going to move forward.
Yes.
Even 5, 10, 20 years to come.
Correct.
Because we have had so many human rights violations in South Sudan. How do we ensure that we do not claw back the gains that
we will ensure we do not go back into this mess that we are in by almost one or two ways if we can do. First and foremost, if we commit ourselves to this agreement. During the resumptions of this Tumaini initiative, there was a call by several stakeholders from the international community that this process should be the last peace negotiation outside South Sudan. The rest should be handled. Of course, the state must continue dialoguing among itself. You know, even the constitution is always sometimes a very small document. But within that document, it gives mechanism, for people to continue dialoguing. Yeah? Once we democratize the state, once we have a constitution that allows people to dialogue, to petitions their leaders, to change the leaders, when time is right, when time is ripe. And then we will not have now a reason for people to continue fighting, isn't it? Yes. But when there's this proverb that when we stop talking, we start fighting. Yes, when we guarantee an environment for people to converse, to petition their leaders, when we have a court where aggrieved parties can go to court and seek justice, then there will be no reason for people taking arm, isn't it? It is in the mind of everyone. When we succeeded, we will not go back to war again. People have been calling attention to war. But now, here is a situation where almost, like in 2014 to 2015, about 400,000 people were killed. How do you guarantee the children, the victim, justice, in order for them not to take arm again? Some people have been dispossessed of their properties. Some people are not going to school for the last 10 years. That's a very dangerous development. It is difficult. It requires patriotism. It requires people with heart for their people to be able to change that narrative. Right? So for us to migrate completely from this, from this situation, is to have a complete change of heart. We implement this process. We become so realistic, so committed in telling our people that we are here. We're not going to be, because the leadership, those of us who are involved in this process now, cannot be the initiators and the beneficiaries at the same time.
Yes. Yes.
You get the point?
Yes.
That is, to me, this is something that we need to put in the mind of our people. That let them, for instance, there has been a call. There has been a call from members of South Sudanese that the leadership should also see it possible to not to buy and allow other people to take over. That has happened in Madagascar. The two conflict leaders in Madagascar in 2012 were also told, were barred from contesting.
Yes.
They were only, by the constitutional record, they were told, just preside over elections. And that was done. If President Kiir and Dr. Riek Machar and the leadership, the opposition leadership in the Tumaini, are also told by the South Sudan people, don't buy, don't contest. Let other people come in. That's also another way. It has been done. Though the Madagascar model is done also in South Sudan. That can also work. Like, for instance, there was, when the Tumaini initiative began, there was proposal by the opposition, right? There was a proposal that President Kiir and Dr. Riek Machar should not buy in the coming elections. And to do that, they were going to be granted their safety. They will be granted, immunity. If they fear that made them to hold on power even after things get worse, is the fear for accountability. They can be granted their immunity. That's a discussion that is also on the table. Yes. Yeah, and that has been tried somewhere else, like the Madagascar, models. Yes. It was done in 2012. People like Rajon Lumana, and his rival then were told, including the spouse, not to buy in an election. Yeah, and that restored. Yes, yeah, that restore peace.
Allow me to give you apologies. Allow me to give you 15 seconds to give your closing statements, and including how inclusive this Tumaini initiative and how much you are counting on this peace initiative, because it's not the first peace initiative that has been mooted for South Sudan.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, KBC, and to you. I'll make 3 last remarks. One is a call for South Sudanese people to continue supporting initiative for 3 main reasons. One is that Tumaini initiative is about a permanent constitution making. It's about reconciling the nation. It's about making sure that we have a retrained, reunified national army that can guarantee security for all of us. Because we cannot have different armed forces in every village. That is a recipe for chaos, not just during election, but even before the elections. So those are 3 reasons that I want the South Sudanese to support the initiative for. The second one is that as a member of this process, I have seen that there has been some forces among our South Sudanese community that continue to level some members of members in the negotiations as negative force, as this. So from my criminological experience, there is a theory known as labeling theory. When you label somebody as negative, as anti-peace, he's likely going to be that negative. So I wanted our people to avoid calling members of the delegations from the government, from the oppositions, as negative, as these, as 30 years, and so on and so forth. We need to do that. Secondly, I came, this is a new year, I come with a small gift that I wanted to give to you and the KBC. It's in form of a book that was written by General Stephen Baronyang. It's called The New History. You remember we have been, in South Sudan, we are fighting in different fronts. We are fighting illiteracy, we are fighting armed conflict. And as a people, we have been dominated over the years. It is now time for us to be known. So when I came here, I was given a book. It's known as The New History. Someone placed it down here. I can give it to you. And to be able to do some inquiries and continue investigating our cultures and the good part of it.
Indeed.
Thank you so much.
And we have to do that because at the end of the day, if South Sudan bleeds, we also bleed as a country. Thank you so much, Dak Buot Riek Gak, who is also a lawyer and a political analyst and also political activist from South Sudan, who has been keeping tabs with the Tumaini initiative. Remember, this process was spearheaded and is still being spearheaded by President William Ruto together with his counterpart in South Sudan. They resumed their talks yesterday. And we are hoping all the best for South Sudan. Many thanks indeed for joining us. My name is Ben Troy Njue. Lucy Mora has been on sign language interpreter for this live newscast. And also, we are also looking at the Swahili version of this program. So stay in touch for that in the next couple of minutes or so. We are having Kurunzi Mashinani and Tamrini coming up next. Many thanks. Let's continue this conversation on our social sites.